To the left, we have the Samsung Q8FN, and to the right, we have the Samsung QN90B. Now, one of the things I want to draw your attention to is the fact that the Samsung Q8FN is from 2018. The QN90B is from 2022, quite obviously. Now, if you want the short answer is the Samsung Q8FN and the QN90B kind of tie with overall picture quality. And I'll tell you why. So the Samsung Q8FN tends to have the more realistic expressions of detail and things like that, but the refinements to color in terms of like skin tones and like how highlights even are rendered is better on the QN90B. So there are instances where we'll load this clip up again and I'll just kind of show you what I'm talking about. This scene right here, you can see a lot more of the highlight glow around Ratchet. You can see around the face. I mean, these kinds of things around the armor, all that ambient glow comes in a lot better on the QN90B. So it's not like Samsung has been sitting idly by, I would say, but again, they aren't making enough of an argument here because as we see with the Q8FN, I don't know why, but the colors just look better. They're more vibrant for one. If you look at the cyan in the back, like right over here, it's just more vibrant than what I'm seeing over here where it's pale and washed out. Look at the face. The face is more vibrant, more rich, where this is a little bit more washed out. It's that highlight glow that kind of comes as a double-edged sword. The red on the top of Ratchet's little antenna, well, you look on both spots and it looks better on the Samsung Q8FN. The Samsung Q8FN looks like a CGI movie paused, and the Samsung QN90B looks more like, I don't know, it looks more like a video game, really. It just like, its highlights are really the best part of the picture quality, and that's where it stops. If we look at blooming, this is the same exact image, okay? The Samsung Q8FN, only 40 zones of full array local dimming. Look at how deep the black levels are around this light. I know you guys remember this from a prior comparison. If you don't, definitely check out my prior comparisons in the comparison playlist. You'll see really crazy stuff like this because look at the blooming on this flagship Samsung QN90B mini LED television getting its ass beaten by a TV with only 40 zones of full array local dimming. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Samsung scamming people for $2,000 talking about some next level experience that just isn't there. And this is what your money buys you in 2022. A lesser experience than what you got years ago when they weren't being so ambitious. Now, I really want to drive this home for people thinking like, I'm just picking on Samsung. I love my Samsung Q8FN because on images like this, it doesn't have that level of blooming like you see over here. You see all the light trails and all of this nonsense in a normally lit room. You can see my hand, you can see everything, okay? No lights off. Imagine when the lights go off how bad this is gonna be. Samsung, when there were highlights on the screen in 2018, looked at this image and said, you know what, we need to dim this down. We don't care about all that stuff. We care more that it doesn't look like this trash over here. And then somewhere down the road decided that this was more visually appealing than this over here. This is why I keep harping on Samsung and using this picture to do it, because this was 2018. This is 2022. They are major differences, or two different eras almost, with the way that they've gone about it. Let's go to the next image. Another one that I show all the time. Just look at the blooming coming off of the Samsung the QN90B. It's ridiculous. This is a $2,000 experience, so Samsung claims. But then again, look at something from an older era. And again, it didn't cost me no $2,000. This TV after taxes was like $1,600 for a 55-inch back in its prime. So, I mean, justify the cost how? Quantum matrix technology? I mean, if we're really nitpicking here, and I'm telling you every little thing I see, the black levels are technically a little bit grayer on the Q8FN. For example, if you look in all the areas that aren't blooming, yeah, sure, they do a better job of getting darker and more black where that has more of a glow to it. But I mean, for crying out loud, the overall representation isn't, out of place. The uniformity is on point with the Samsung Q8FN, and that's just not happening here on the QN90B. Now, for dramatic effect, I think we can kind of zoom in a little bit and show you a little bit more of what I'm talking about. You can kind of see a little bit of glowing towards the middle section here, I suppose, if you really want to stretch and look that hard. I mean, but that kind of thing is not seen very easily. I can't even, like, dude, I'm actually gonna go off the tripod here, right? We're trying to find some problems, and all we see is, like, honestly, it's just nothing. There's a whole lot of nothing happening there. Now, when we go over to the QN90B, look at all that. It's literally disgusting, and I'm sitting straight on for anybody that wants to try to claim that, oh, you're just picking on the, no, because explain that Samsung over there, and then explain this Samsung over here, and I don't care how you try to spice it, this is the same exact ISO and sensitivity to light. There are no tricks. This TV is just horseshit when it comes to local dimming control. And again, yeah, sure, it can get kind of dark. As you see, look, you can clearly see blooming crap, and then areas where it should be dark, because it is dark there, but then again, it's crappy around there, and that doesn't happen here, right? So that's my point. That's what I'm trying to show you between these two displays. Samsung needs to get back to this already. Images like this kind of show a more full and complete difference between these two displays. This Samsung is just absolutely rendering way more accurate color, depth, dimensionality. I mean, just look at the scene. The Samsung QN90B is more pale in the dress here, where over here we have way more saturation, color, richness. It's more true to, as they say, the director's intent, if you will, and it looks a lot more like a next level QLED. Again, this is a time period where Samsung was wrapping quantum dots in metal to give you more vibrant, beautiful images, and it's very obvious that they've walked that back in favor of cheap, second-rate quantum dot materials, and it's very apparent when you compare it against Samsung at their best to whatever the hell this is supposed to be. Now, colors and their vibrancy do look good on the QN90B. So that magenta there, the purple, that looks good. I think really the QN90B's specialty rather is basically if there's something that needs to be juiced up, it finds it and it like super juices it. But that's not accuracy, and I'm not a stickler for accuracy, right? But there's something that when you look at an image and it looks fundamentally wrong, it looks fundamentally wrong. Like if we go back again, when you're looking at images like this, right? And we have Ratchet to the left and Clank to the left versus what we have to the right. I mean, like that yellow is so pale and faded right over here on the QN90B, where over here it's the rich yellow it's supposed to be. It just sings, and you know it's supposed to look like that. Also, there's more depth in the background on the Samsung Q8FN. You can see more background contrast there versus up here where it's pale and faded. And again, the same can be seen in the buildings. Now, this implies, again, that even though Samsung is talking about a real depth kind of feature this year where they're adding more dimensionality, that's again more of the same kind of gimmicky nonsense, because as we're seeing in like real world examples, it's not actually doing anything different or game changing, I should say, from what we've seen from them before. Now, the relevancy of this is they're charging $2,000 plus, not just $2,000, because after taxes, you're well over $2,000. It's almost $2,100, right? And this is for an experience that, frankly, I mean, like, you're getting better highlights for sure than the Q8FN. For whatever reason, the QN90B focuses more of their attention on, you know what, screw local dimming. We're just going to give you the most juicy, beautiful highlights, which has its merits. But Samsung looks at highlights on the Q8FN very differently. So what they end up saying is, you know what? We don't really care about the most juiced up highlights. If there's blooming that's going to happen because of those highlights, guess what you're not getting? Those juiced up highlights. And it creates this like black canvas that mimics almost what you'd get on a more OLED-esque type of television. And like this whole scene right now, this dark, near black, like low light scene in this animation looks so much better on the Q8FN. It's like a day and night. Like I'm looking at it and my eye immediately looks straight through the Q8FN, where it just looks at the QN90B. Again, it's not something that should be happening for $2,000 for just, hear me on this please, just a 55-inch television. That is gross. That is just a disgusting markup, right? And I think that's the real story here. Now, you can compare with a bunch of different metrics and a bunch of different things, but ultimately the Samsung Q8FN is a stronger television, even still today, all these years later, than what I'm seeing. Because you're not going to tell me that, giving me better highlight contrast is all I need, because again, I've shown on multiple occasions the blooming that comes out of that. And I think that's a double-edged sword at that point. And then I look at the Q8FN, and the depth that comes off of it is surpassing mini LED. And again, this is a full array television with 40 zones, hear me on this, 40 zones of full array local dimming. Not even however many they packed into this QLED here with the Samsung Q90B. Now, I want to run this part back because while I told you that they have better color accuracy in some scenes, not all. So if you look at this purple alien type creature here, you can clearly see that on the QN90B, that's all pale and washed out and faded. The Q8FN showing the right representation of purple. Also, the red is more vibrant on the pants here on the alien. It just looks way better. The contrast, the background contrast, again, looks better on the Q8FN. And again, this is my thing. If you're going to charge $2,000 and you're going to say that you have mini LEDs that are smaller than a grain of sand, don't get beaten at all on any level. And I think, again, its biggest claim to fame is like things like, we've got a highlight here. Now, you can't really see the highlight, so I'll have to move the camera a little bit more like this way. Again, up here, you can see a really bright highlight on the Q8FN. They're dimming down to preserve the overall scene. And I think that's more important. Now, this might be a preferential thing for some people, but I think that's more important than just saying, you know what, screw it, let's just give you brightness for brightness sake. And again, that's really what the biggest difference is here. Now, I will tell you that the motion is better on the Samsung QN90B. That's one of the big improvements that they had coming from the Q8FN. So as time goes on and as you kind of experience different media pieces or what have you, you're just going to notice these things. I think if I had to really sum this up without dragging it out or showing too much content, they do tie because ultimately speaking, the highlight advantages can be huge for some people, and I'm not lost there, right? But the low light performance of the Samsung Q8FN is literally unrivaled by the Samsung QN90B. So it kind of becomes a tit for tat. And then I look at the clarity and the depth coming off of the Q8FN right now in this scene. Like, dude, I'm gonna run that. Look at all the blooming too. Also, let's open up the ISO a little bit. I don't know. It's kind of gone there. There's no need to. Let's be nice here. Let's not even show the blooming because I feel like that's just gonna really be picking on them a little too much. But trust me, there's a substantial amount of blooming right now on the menu that doesn't exist on the Q8FN. When you open this up and you see all this stuff, it's pretty bad. So yeah, that's another thing. But I'm gonna run it back a little bit, just a little bit here, so we can show you just a little bit of what I'm talking about. Like when you get to scenes like this, the clarity looks so much better on the Q8FN. Like it just looks more immersive. So in a nutshell, again, it's just kind of like you can pay the markup, but like comparing it to something that I already owned from Samsung, right? They're quantum dots wrapped in metal. I'm just seeing a more consistent, a better experience, something that just looks visually better on the left than I do to the right. And again, if all you care about is highlights and brightness for brightness sake, that's what Samsung's really targeting this year. They're like, hey, we'll give you the brightest brights, but they're not really balancing out that picture like they used to back in 2018, as you're clearly seeing right here. So I think that should be talked about when we talk about Samsung's development and growth of these products. Now, again, not trying to make anybody feel bad about the purchase. If you bought the QN90B, enjoy it, love it. This is just honestly what it's like when you compare it to something a little bit older, where they maybe tried a little bit harder in some areas. And believe me, the depth coming off of the Q8FN, bro, like slaughtering the QN90B. I have no idea what this is gonna look like until I put it into YouTube and upload it and you guys are already seeing it. But dude, like this image over here has so much 3D draw to it that this looks like a toy by comparison with like just how like bland it is. This looks like the cheaper TV, like straight up. Like if I was to guess, I would say that obviously the one on the right is the more entry level set. And The Q8FN, by all technicality, is technically a QN, what is it by now? The QN85B. That's technically where the Q8FN would have sit in today's lineup. Well, it's absolutely crushing the QN90B, like with no mercy. And I think for me personally, when that's the case, the colors are richer right here, like all around. Like, it's just, a win is a win, right? So no need to drag it on. You guys kind of get the idea. But if you have questions, drop them down below. And thanks for watching the #1 brand in honesty. It's a win for the Samsung Q8FN.